Welcome to the Masters of Engineering podcast. We take a look at cool products, the people who develop them, and how they do it. I'm your host, John Hirschtick. I've spent my entire career building software tools for product developers, CAD and PDM software. But the best part of my job, I get to meet the people who develop the coolest products on earth. In my podcast, you get to meet them too. Now today, wonderful guest, someone I've known for years. It's Craig Derian. He is the VP of Engineering for Cover, former Tesla guy too, and fascinating. I know you're going to love hearing from him. Craig, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, John. Appreciate you letting me be here.
Well, I've so enjoyed talking with you over the years and visiting you earlier this year in person that I know our audience is going to love hearing from you. And so let's start with Cover.
Yeah. So Cover, we are a startup in Los Angeles, and our mission is to make thoughtfully designed and well-built homes for everybody. And we're doing that by turning the home from an assembly of parts into a fully engineered product by combining software and parts design and process to enable custom homes and backyard homes to be sold at increasing volume and at continued reduced cost.
Okay. So when you said custom, and did you say backyard homes?
We've begun with backyard homes as a company because they're smaller, allow us to iterate the product faster. Sort of the story I tell to draw correlation to my earlier career in automotive. We're sort of cresting out of our Roadster phase to draw the equivalency to Tesla, and we're progressing into our Model S phase so that we can then reach our Model 3 phase.
Right. That's actually a really important. And by the way, first thought that I see other companies developing products do that. I love that idea of the phasing because too often I'll run into someone developing a product and they're like trying to get everything perfect for the ultimate vision. And then they miss it. So it's almost like a macro agile approach, huh?
That's a good way to say it.
And can you just give a little more description of the size, typical size?
Yeah. So we build roughly between 500 and 700 square feet backyard homes. And our system is a panelized system. So it's not containers that are shipped and delivered by large cranes. These are small panelized systems, flat packed, frankly, that ship to site and then are assembled on site. And coming from automotive, we look at site as install, and we're really continuing to develop the processes and the parts and the tooling so that when you install a cover on site, it is very akin to building a car on an automotive production line. No decision making, all of the tools are there, all of the processes are there. Everybody's fully trained, maybe not necessarily classical tooling, but fully engineered parts that are assembled just like a car I'm assembling.
So you're making homes, and you said small homes today, but eventually bigger like that. Absolutely. And so why do you think no one had done this before? It seems like a great idea to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of institutional inertia, I would say, right, around codes and around getting enough personnel to support the production of something like this. One of the key things that we've been able to do in the state of California, and I believe 49 of the 50 states have some sort of code like this, is design our home under the factory built housing program. And what that means is just like a car is built and it's homologated and you have to meet your specifications so that you know that every car coming off the line meets the crash requirements that you've tested to. We're doing the same thing with our home, where each one that we build isn't a prototype. Each one is built to the quality standards that we've had approved by the states. And then all we have to do for inspections is show connection to the grid and connection to the ground. Right. But everything above ground is already certified.
So it's hard, and there's inertia and regulatory environment, which is, by the way, I'd say an increasing part of what a lot of product developers see. People in a lot of industries, not maybe as regulated as yours, but still seeing more environmental and social compliance than ever. And tell me, you've installed. Can you say how many of these?
We're cresting 3 dozen.
Okay.
Is sort of and the really interesting thing about that is no two are the same.
Okay.
I think that's a really important differentiator. We're not just printing the same thing and doing it over and over. We don't have a whole row of homes that all look exactly the same. We have a fixed number of parts from which can be, near infinitely configured, right? And that's really the goal here, right? The Lego analogy, right? Taking a bunch of parts and being able to do anything you want with them, but there are rules to how they connect, driven by the connection technique, and that's what allows us to deliver one a month.
One a month.
Yeah,
That's cool.
and we're driving to be even faster than that. It's like, when I first got to Tesla before we launched S, right, we had like 4 lifts that we were building roadsters on, or 6 lifts, right? And then you have to like engineer the product to be built. And Tesla, Model S was a step to really make great electric cars, and then Model 3 was really to make it much more able to scale. And so we're trying to, follow that path, but really address scalability right from the get-go.
And by the way, those 36 homes, those are all in relatively close to where you are right now.
We are
California.
only selling in Los Angeles city proper right now. And really that just allows us to focus and really understand, keep customers close, make sure we don't scale anything that we can't control or that we don't fully know. And like I said, we're cresting being able to deliver more places.
By the way, you called your homes, you called it a cover. I think I've heard you say it before.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Yeah.
Right. It's just like you would call your car a Tesla, just like you would call your car BMW, or your your coffee maker or Keurig or something.
Uh-huh.
Right. That is what it is. It's not quite the same as anything else, and it is uniquely different. Both in its design and its precision, its high quality. Our goal is to make really well thought out spaces, well engineered spaces, not just spaces that assemble quickly, but spaces that enable you as a customer to get more out of the space, right? To have, we have full height windows, frameless windows, so you can get a lot of natural light in and really enjoy the experience of your surroundings. We're continuing to develop, architectural details that bring the outside in and the inside out, right? To really blur that line and take advantage of our full height architectural windows, and really change the space and people's interaction with the space. And, but it takes really detailed engineering to do all of that.
And if I talk to the people, your customers, what is their like biggest, they must be a lot of happy customers, I imagine, but what are the biggest things that they would say to me about why they like it?
Great question. And thank you for asking it. The one thing that we provide is upfront pricing. As you change the layout of your home, your price dynamically changes as well. And so that upfront price includes all of the architecture, it includes all of the site work, it includes all of the regulatory, and includes obviously the product. And that's a really important step to turning the home from being an assembly of parts into an engineered product, not only from the final product perspective, but from the experience of purchasing perspective as well. And so our customers love that they don't have to worry about anything, love that we handle everything for them, and love the precision, the detail, and the quality of the final product.
It's really, really neat. And can you tell me what the whole experience would be like for one of your customers?
If you, customers sign up on our website, we give them a call. We have an automatic zoning tool where if you have property in LA, you can see where you could build and how big it could be, given the current zoning requirements, which have eased in the last several years to allow people to have larger backyard homes and build in more places.
Wait. These zoning rules have eased in California.
They have.
Now that's a little counterintuitive to some people who are always hearing zoning's getting tighter and tighter. Tell us more about that.
I should have done a little bit more research before it came on, but the state has allowed for tighter or smaller setbacks, and for larger homes generally to be built, larger backyard homes to be built, only in the last months. And a few years ago, they made a step towards this, I think at the end of 2017. And at the end, in about the middle of 2022, they also made a similar step, again, because of the housing crisis out here in California, really trying, the single family dwelling layouts. And, we can get into all the zoning issues that have and their effect on housing crisis in this country, but
Yeah.
they're trying to ease that in many of the areas around California.
And not that I can't imagine, but when you say housing crisis, can you just elaborate on the nature of that crisis in Los Angeles and California?
Yeah, I think Los Angeles is unique because it is so landlocked, but obviously it continues to expand east. But around the country, it's not so much about land being available. It's about zoning allowing a little bit tighter density of housing, right? A lot of places you could only build single family dwelling units, like single family homes on, so much property. And now they're allowing for more homes or smaller areas per single family home, to allow an increased density, so that people can live closer to where they want to work, and so that people can have a higher quality of life that can result from that. And right, there are desirable places, and people want to be able to build, but also, we see our home as being able to enable homes to be built anywhere, like not being tied to that. So, our system of engineering and design, and delivery and production, is really developed to allow us to build anywhere. Our product is, right, whether you're on a fault line or have some flood zone requirements or have high wind. Ultimately, we will be able to handle all of that. We're obviously staying narrow.
But back to the crisis. The crisis.
Yeah.
You said people could live closer to work. Everyone would like to live closer to work. I will assume, sort of commute. But that's not a crisis. It's in my opinion, when you say crisis, is it that do you mean that people that aren't just homes? Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And
so
that not having enough homes is a many faceted problem. But what we do think is there is a lot of red tape around building. There is a lot of, and we think that if you can improve the product and if you can change somebody's experience with the product, what can that enable on the regulatory side, sort of as a, rather than waiting for the regulation to change, which, herding cats and all that, and takes too long and got to get that organized, is sometimes difficult, often difficult. And so we look at the problem as being able to be served by having a product that is able to be built much faster, right? Like imagine if you could build, living space for, a small family in a week or two, right? If you have a space, as opposed to having all of the other, requirements that go along with lining up a bunch of subcontractors to do the work. We still need, good labor and skilled people, but as you have a product that is easier to install, it just goes faster.
It's just really cool. So what you're saying is you could make it more people be able to have a home. Do you think it'll help ultimately even help homeless problems or people improve the amount of house someone can afford and the speed they can move? These are really profound human problems, and they're growing in our world. And so
our goal is ultimately to change the world's expectation of construction. We have a path towards throughput and a path towards cost that, if we're successful, it would make very little sense to build any other way.
So often product developers think about, there's a thing and they're going to make a better version of the thing. And you're certainly doing that, but you're thinking about a whole process and impact in a way that is really inspiring. And, and just quickly, we started out along the process. You said, so they come to the website, they say where they live, you do zoning and study, and then what happens?
Then we reach out to you. We do some custom designs for you if you're interested in proceeding. Right now, those are a little manual, but we have some automated processes in along those ways. Okay. Once we agree on a design, we have a whole automated system to create the permit set, so that we can submit the permit set very quickly. We developed a full CAD bomb, right? We started talking about CAD. Your background is CAD, and
Yep.
that's how we got started. Was developing a full engineering bomb for each product, not just a build schedule, going like full automotive level bombs, and then using those to kick off manufacturing processes, just like you would a car.
Now, when you say a full bomb, a bomb can have varying levels of detail. Do you mean a
Yeah.
bomb? Can you give us some granularity of what's in your bomb?
I mean, if it doesn't go in the unit, it's not in the bomb. If it goes in the unit, it's in the bomb.
So literally every
screw,
fastener, every screw, paint,
absolutely,
okay,
yeah,
everything.
Right?
Everything.
We have supply chain. We're a manufacturing company, really.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is we're manufacturing something that is a little different every time, and that's a little bit industry 4.0, right? Where you have the machine that builds the machine, where we're actually able to, we have a lot to do to continue to improve our manufacturing processes, but they are fully capable right now of being highly adaptable
Cool.
and yielding high quality parts.
And one other thing I remember from when I visited is about, and everyone's talking about sustainability, waste, energy. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our, being a Series B startup in Los Angeles, our focus right now really is making sure that we have something that scales, and every decision that we're making is about reducing energy consumption, not only in the production of the unit, but also in the operation of the unit. But when you think of it, just by reducing the install time, reducing trips to site, having a product that isn't cut and has a lot of waste at site.
Yeah, tell me about the waste. I think you mentioned that to me once.
Yeah, we, the part arrives, and the goal is no cutting, no filing, no fitting, no decision making at site. We want to have a very clean process so that the part arrives, you know exactly where it goes, and that's a complicated system. What I really love about what I'm doing now is it really is a system engineering project, right? Thinking about it not only for each project, but the system of how is this information communicated, how are the parts made, right? We've got fantastic leads of manufacturing and production right now, and supply chain, and we're really humming along and getting the processes working well so that we can continue to scale our product. And that's what I think excites me as much as anything about what we're doing is like the technical challenge around the software that's required and the mechanical engineering, the electrical engineering that's required to really create this system.
What's the difference in waste between a conventional home building today and a cover?
Some conventional home builders can get up to like a container a week, like a 20 or usually like a 20-foot dumpster a week. And we have 2 or 3 trash cans for the whole project.
So a typical, I've read somewhere that like a home construction in general is what, like 20% waste or something like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of material waste.
That's incredible. That's just going into landfill, whatever, and you go down to a fraction of that. Fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And
thank you, by the way.
Yeah,
that's good for all of us, right? And
that's why what we're doing. The team that we've hired and everything that we're doing is we're very passionate about it.
That's a really cool aspect of what you're doing is using less raw materials. By the way, everyone listening to this podcast who's a product developer has trouble getting raw materials today. If you're a product developer, you're thinking about raw materials more than ever. I hear it from all my customers. None of them say, oh, it's easier to get raw materials. It's supply chain, it's competitiveness to get them and so forth, sourcing, international boundaries and so forth. So the fact that you have for a huge material using consumer like the housing industry, a way to reduce raw material use, that's big, not just for houses, big for everyone. So many cool things here. And then last thing with the back to user experience. So I go through, I look at the custom designs, I like one. What happens then?
Yeah. You sign up for a slot. We're still sold out almost a year, if not more. And so we get you slotted in, and you have a window in which it'll be built, and you don't have to do anything. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to go get plans approved. You don't have to fight with the city. You don't have to, be worried about if the contractor is going to be any good. We don't subcontract out any of the installs. They're cover install team.
Cover employees come to your site.
Absolutely.
Cool.
We look at the cover install a little bit like, as we scale, a little bit like you would have a dealership network, right?
Uh-huh.
Service network where people trained up on the product are able to go and work on it anywhere and install it anywhere.
That's so cool. And then, so you do it all. So there's no brokering between the subcontractor, general contractor, the architect, the engineer, and
cut out all the fluff.
So, and tell me about the price. You set a price when I order it, and that's
we do
the customer.
There's
that's it. Price. One price. There's no, we had a little delay in the plumbing, or we had, it never happens.
We're able to be very confident in this region right now. And we have learned what it takes to be confident so that we can expand that to other regions.
So it's like ordering a car. It would be like similar if I order a Tesla on my phone, it shows up, I pay the price, it shows up in the driveway, and that's kind of,
it's a fully engineered product.
It's right? Really amazing. It's so interesting. It's so imaginative and so hard. And let me turn. I can't resist asking a lot about Tesla because it is one of the more cooler, and certainly, even if those who don't think it's cool, it's certainly a company of note in today's world.
Yeah.
Tell me about, how can, in a few minutes, can you tell me what your journey was at Tesla?
I loved it. And I'm still very friendly with a lot of people that are there. And I wish them all the best.
Including Elon Musk, by the way, I have to ask. So you worked with him?
I have no ill will at all. I think, he pushes the team hard. He asks the hard questions, and he's always sort of bringing it back to the first principles. Which
you worked with him.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to work with him on a lot of different things.
That's really interesting. I mean, I think to a lot of people, but
I'm not like
you weren't the only one, but you did. And so what did you do at Tesla? When did you start? Where was
I started? I was hired as a launch engineer. It's all on my LinkedIn page at the beginning of 2012. So I had been in motorsports for 13 years before that. IndyCar, NASCAR, some Formula One consulting and FIA work, military vehicle work, back to NASCAR in 2011, tied for a championship as the lead engineer for Carl Edwards. Realized that I wouldn't be able to leave. I was like I understood what I wanted to try something different. Knew somebody who knew somebody at Tesla, said, "Hey, I hear you guys are looking for people." My wife's from the Bay Area, so we went back and started there as a launch engineer in the chassis team, and helped out on the vehicle dynamics side. In motorsports, I was doing like vehicle modeling, performance modeling, how you make a car go faster, some race engineering as well, and then eventually got into the same role at Tesla, and then took over vehicle dynamics in like end of 2014, early 2015. And then led all of that through Model 3 development and launch, updating S and X, and left right when we kicked off Model Y, right at October or September of 2018. So that was the fun part, was on the vehicle dynamics side, really getting into the product level requirements. That's really when I started to interface with Elon more. The driving experience, and what we did for the Model 3 and the Y certainly benefits from this as well, is the Model S was very good longitudinal. You put your foot down and it reminds you it's different every time you put your foot down, right? Not only does it remind you every time you walk up because of the self-presenting door handles that this product is different, it's a little unique. But also every time you put your foot down, that's obviously the benefit of the electric motors with high torque at 0 RPM and those other interesting things. So with Model 3, right, okay, we had done that. So what's the next thing here? And Elon had some requirements, and really what we focused on was within those requirements, making sure the car was great in the meat of the histogram, like how can you make sure that people's driving experience, even though it's oftentimes in, autopilot, is really um, engaging? Really, I think is probably the best word. So even if you put little steering inputs in, how can the car respond immediately? You don't put a steering input in and like wait a half a second and the car responds. It's just like it's an immediate connection to what you want the car to do, and how to do that with low rolling resistance tires and meeting cost targets and doing all of those other things. So that was really educational. We took some of the motorsports vehicle development processes and implemented it, and they've certainly continued and gone much further.
When you say motorsports vehicle development processes and
Yeah.
implement it, can you elaborate on that and how that would be different than
Yeah.
car processes?
Um, I think a lot of automotive companies are getting to this point, or have even gone past some of the motorsports stuff, but having data on the cars
Uh-huh.
and using that data to inform engineering changes, like, running the analyses, understanding the phase changes, and understanding the frequency domains where the car is working well and where it isn't, and the phasing of the front axle to the rear axle, and what does it mean for the car to develop grip, right? My master's was in tire modeling, and so I've always sort of approached vehicle dynamics from the contact patch right into the
Oh,
vehicle. Um,
yeah.
and that was really, we just sort of scratched the surface when I was there, and they've continued down that path from what I understand. And, they continue to make great products, and yeah, it's a lot, it
You
was a lot.
you told me when we were preparing for this podcast, you mentioned personally delivering early
Yeah.
Teslas. Can you talk about that and why you did that?
Yeah. Well, why? It was because we didn't have a delivery team, and everybody got enlisted to do the
Delivery.
work. Or we had an understaffed and overstretched delivery team, and it was fun, frankly. Right, you got to and you come in on the weekends or stay late. And in the very early days, we had this white glove service. You pay an extra fee, and we drive the car to you and deliver it, walk you through how to use the car. Right, it was still new, and we were still having articles written about us, like thinking that we'd never sell more than 7,000 units a year, and immediately crested the 20,000 into 100,000 now,
Amazing.
with SNX.
You
And
must be so satisfied and so proud when you drive all of us, when we drive down any street, we're gonna see Tesla Model S, Model 3, Model Y. They're all
yeah,
over the place, and you must feel I hope you feel great about them.
like, there's a huge team responsible for making sure it all worked. But when at launch, like, having help set up some of the early production lines was my job before
Yeah.
S. And then when we had manufacturing hell that came out for Model 3, coming back into it and having some really great team members where we all came in and reset up subframe lines, and
Wow.
did everything we could to make sure that those cars was going out. What I really learned there was what's possible. That
What's
was
possible?
really, yeah, like, you don't have to look at the constructs of structure of a company, and um, what you have to do is hire really great problem solvers who are excited about bringing first principles approaches to whatever problem is in front of them.
Well, can I have like I could talk to you all day. Oh, and we've gotten to like racing. Wow, we could talk about that. But I guess I have two final questions.
Sure.
One is, do you think you took what you learned at Tesla, now you're reinventing the world of housing? And you said small houses, but you told the audience
Yeah,
bigger houses to come, bigger buildings.
absolutely.
Um, do you think the lessons you've learned, the things you've been talking about, do you think they apply to other industries that
Yeah.
other listeners might be in?
There's no end, I think, to where
No
they are.
end.
Right?
Okay.
The 20th century constructs of even what a company is, I
Hmm.
think need to be readdressed. Right, the tearing down of the silos, the management techniques required to do that. People talk about matrix management, but like, how
Yep.
do you actually do it well? How do you grow teams that want to do both and want to stay, broad sometimes, but then get specific? One of the reasons, forgive me, I believe it's either Socrates or Plato in one of their writings. Uh,
Okay.
the quote is "care of the soul," right? Like, your number one job here is to take care of your soul. And I sort of like change every 10 or so years. I'll like make a change in my career, from motorsports to Tesla now to homes, um, and I see that as part of that, like trying to do something different and challenge myself, not just get to a point where I'm the expert and like now I'm just the expert guy. Um,
But yeah,
and really try to build that in our teams, right? How can you, right? Because if you're comfortable, right, like you begin to lose your edge, right? And so you have to
yeah,
remain a little bit
yeah.
uncomfortable
Gotta be a little
to
uncomfortable.
stay tenacious and keep.
Maybe you've put yourself in a couple situations where you've made yourself more than a little bit uncomfortable with
It's
respect
part
to
of
the
the fun, though.
standard industry that you're in, whether it's cars or housing. And I also wanted to ask you, what's your favorite Tesla? If you could say, I'm going to have it right out the door, maybe you do
Yeah.
right out the door
Um,
to drive. What would you?
I have the Model 3 Performance. I think is really quite.
That's your favorite, the Model 3 Performance.
Yeah, the
Cool.
plant is obviously fantastic longitudinally,
Yeah.
and really
Longitude.
fast with big sticky tires.
Yeah.
But the Model 3 Performance, we had a lot of fun with it, and they've gone through developments on the stability control and some things since I was there. But that was a lot of fun.
I got to tell you, the time flew by. You're a
Yeah,
fascinating guest, and I just want to. I think it's time to wrap up. But I
yeah,
wanted to say, let me say thank you for being here. It's so cool to talk to you as always. And I just want to say to our listeners, thank you for joining us today, for tuning in, whether you're a listener or viewer. You can learn more about Cover at buildcover.com. Or and you can find Craig on Instagram it's just at Craig Derian, right? Couldn't be any simpler. Craig, CraigDerian.
that's correct.
And you can find him there. And I'll repeat what he said earlier. They're looking for engineers, and I gotta say, I've been to the facility. It's really cool. So just putting out a plug there. And I want you to know also,
Too.
PLM manager, you need a PLM manager. Well, there's some of those in my world and yours, and so maybe they'll be listening in. Listeners and viewers, you can listen to other episodes or subscribe at Apple Podcasts of this podcast, Masters of Engineering, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, and tune in on YouTube for the video version of this. I like to hear what you think of this podcast, and Craig, today you can tell me what you think. And you can leave a review of the episode. Will help me understand what you think in any of those programs. You can follow me on Twitter at jhirschtick, JHIRSCHTICK. Again, big thank you, Craig, for taking time.
Thank you for having me.
Out of what you're doing, which is so compelling. I really appreciate it. I know our listeners and viewers do too. That's it for today. See you next time on Masters of Engineering.